Great, welcome to this episode, and we are live at the Sustainable Education Summit, which is a really exciting event, the second year in a row that we've run this at Edge with our colleagues at Schools of Tomorrow. We've got about 100 people in Birmingham, about 60 school leaders and 40 young people aged about 7 to 17, and it's always such an inspirational event, seeing particularly the younger and older kids working together with a real passion about this area. So I've got two special guests with me today. I've got Alba Brandt, who's the co-founder of the Green School in South Africa. And I've got Malika Dahl, who is a youth voice, sustainability activist, and a consultant to today's event. And she's been helping the young people to get involved and engage as well. So I'm going to start by asking you, Malika, just tell us a little bit about your own personal education journey. How did you get to where you were?
I studied marine biology and climate change. Marine biology was my bachelor's degrees in Scotland, and then I moved to Denmark for my master's. And during my master's, I got asked by Alex, who's collaborating also on this event, to jump onto the first Sustainable Education Summit as a presenter. And then this role kind of just formed into co-creation rather than solely coming for a presentation. And that kind of also drove me actually into going deeper into the topic of student agency. And that's what I then wrote my master thesis about in collaboration with this event. So I used data output from the students to write the thesis. And so right now I'm still involved with Schools of Tomorrow, with the Edge Foundation to work on these events, and kind of still finding a little bit my footing in this world. It's not an easy world to kind of step into when you're not necessarily interested in the classical teacher role, but rather want to kind of find a merging of education and science, research, but not really research. So as you can hear, I'm still kind of trying to figure it out a little bit. But my interests in education, within education, are definitely with climate change, with sustainability, and with giving students a voice within the school system and outside.
Yeah, really nicely put. And I love the way that for the first event last year, you used that as the jumping off point for your thesis. It's lovely. Something that we care about a lot at Edge is kind of connecting research, policy, practice. And obviously it's a really nice example of doing that. And I think, the way that I've seen you interact with the young people today is really impressive. And it's nice to have a range of people who aren't necessarily teachers by background, kind of bringing their experience, bringing their life experience. So I know I can see them really valuing that. And Alba, tell us a little bit about your education journey and how you got here as well.
So my education journey was lovely. I had a great childhood, went to great schools, so rural South Africa mostly, a little bit of time spent in Swaziland, in Namibia, but mostly South Africa. And I enjoyed school, and I was a typical student that sort of fits school really well. And I now call myself the best parrot. I got to be the best parrot. I used to enjoy learning. I didn't necessarily want to think outside of the box. And I fitted the school system. And then I think my journey as an adult has been a bit more critical to imagine, do we still need the same education that I got 30 years ago? Do we need to change what is happening in the world, what's happening in different industries, and how should education keep up with that? And how do we make sure that our kids are prepared for the future that waits for them? So similarly, sustainability is a big passion for me. And we as adults have the responsibility to make changes now and to equip the next generation.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And it feels like there's a couple of themes behind today's event and the work that we're doing. There's the very clear surface theme of sustainability being a massive priority for us as the adults in the room, and doubly so for the young people who have really, we've seen this morning, are super passionate about this. But it also feels like there's an agenda of a different way of educating as well, one that is more collaborative, one where young people have a seat at the table with adults, one where we're working together in teams, where young people are looking at real world problems that bring things to life. And it's nice to see both of those. And the second part of that is something that we could apply to migration or to any of the other kind of big challenges that are facing the world. But of course, sustainability is kind of the theme we're thinking about it today. Malika, how did you, obviously you're very passionate about this whole area, you did marine biology, but what drives your interest in the sustainability side specifically? What drives that?
I think for me, I've always felt really, really connected just to the natural world. I grew up in Berlin, so a really big city, and I didn't really have the same access to to nature areas as other people, which I then realized when I actually did my first degree. I've always been a water person, but I was always a bit scared of the ocean. So I was like, let's just study the ocean. Maybe then I'll be less scared. I'm not. I'm still scared because there's so much we don't know. I just realized more and more we don't know anything about the ocean yet. We know a lot, but not enough. Anyways. But one thing that I realized was a lot of people told me these stories about I would go to the beach on the weekend and I would do rock pooling with my parents and I loved it and I looked at all these animals. I was like, I never had that. And I don't know if I would have children and a few years down the line, if they will ever have that, but because of a very different reason. I didn't have the access to that because Berlin is not at the ocean. And yes, we have parks and some forests, and we did go into nature, if you want to call it that, within the city, but it wasn't the same. And now we're talking about a world that might not have that accessibility for children anymore, and for their children at some point. And that makes me really sad. So for me, it's really this need, like I notice I'm the happiest when I'm in nature, and it pains me to feel nature like decreasing and the diversity decreasing, and seeing the effect of everything that we do on nature in such a negative way, and also on ourselves. Like, we are part of nature, we are nature, right? And then the less we are exposed to the natural world, the more unhappy, I believe, we become. So I think it's also this idea of reconnecting to it that really drives me in sustainability. And which I didn't mention in the beginning, is that apart from this whole science part of me, I'm also a yoga teacher, and I'm very much working with meditation and visualization and trying to bring people to appreciate themselves, but also nature with using these tools, and using these tools to hopefully make them remember that connection. It gives them a lot, and that connection grounds them within the natural world, if that makes sense.
That's beautifully put. And I love how you bring the different parts of your interests and your life together with the kind of strands that interlink. Yeah. And Alba, obviously you said a little bit about your childhood, but what drives your passion? Like, you've founded a whole school in this area. What drives your passion in this kind of space?
Similarly, I feel a deep connection with nature, and I'm happy when I'm in it. We are a walking family, so we go for walks and hikes very often, and we love spending that time together. It's about connecting with each other, because when you're walking, you're not on your phone, and you're also not out of breath, so you can still have a really decent discussion and conversation. Yeah. It also feels that we have the responsibility to protect the planet, and the responsibility to educate ourselves around how can we live on the planet in a better way, in a way that is sustainable, in a way that will keep it being available to our children and to their children. So I feel that responsibility.
Yeah, very much so. And you've taken some very practical action, Alba. So you founded a whole school in South Africa. Tell us a little bit about how that came about. You've been telling the students and the teachers here, but tell us a little bit about that.
So I went through a sustainability phase in 2010. I was an accountant working at PricewaterhouseCoopers, doing management consulting. And then I just started reading everything I could about sustainability, because this whole world opened up. You know, in the businesses that we were working with and our colleagues, we didn't speak about sustainability much. So I realized that there's a lot going on in climate change, in pollution, in the oceans, in food security, in global inequality, and I was fascinated at how did we develop human systems that are so disconnected from our natural world around us? How do we live completely separate from the natural world? You know, we create air-conditioned spaces. Yeah. We don't experience what the weather is like, basic things like that. And then I saw John Hardy's TED talk about Green School in Bali. And then I said to my husband, one day when the kids are old enough to remember, we have to go to Bali and take the kids there and experience this bamboo island with, really weird and wonderful people. And so he kept me to task. And in 2017, we went to Green School Bali and we stayed there for a semester. And we thought it's going to be this once-off experience, even having a wild experience living on this island, and maybe one day in the old age home, that will be a story that we can talk about. And it will definitely be that, but it's so much more, because then we were confronted by just how deeply people think about education and how many different approaches there are where we have not been exposed to them, and how like the structure behind joyful learning, how curated that can be, and how many like hours of preparation and expert skill can go into having a joyful learning experience. And that changed our perception of education. So to put our kids back, and also felt that we will be robbing them of this type of education if we just go back to our traditional school that we were in. So then there was an opportunity to become part of pioneering a network of green schools in different locations in the world, and we jumped at it. So we returned back home, and then we looked for land, we designed and got all our approvals, and then we built. And 3 years later, our kids were back in a green school.
Wow.
Of your own making.
Yeah, well, big team.
Yeah. And how many students have you got today?
At the moment, 117.
Amazing.
So small growing school, at maximum capacity we'll be able to accommodate 500, but it's really nice to be small at the moment.
Yeah, of course. And to give people who are listening an idea, because I was listening to your talk earlier, so this is a school where you give over 50% of the school land to growing food, you grow the food for the school kitchens, the kids are all involved in that. You have zero landfill waste, which sounded like it was one of the biggest challenges.
One of the biggest challenges, and a daily one. It's not one that we will ever solve. So lots of biodiversity, and we followed the Living Building Challenge in terms of a green standard. So we brought in all endemic plants, and we had we had a lot of strange people involved in the building of the campus. One of them was a man whose grandma told him how to propagate the plants that you get in the veld. So he then propagated 25 little plants for us, and we planted them midsummer when it was so hot and the wind was blowing, but it's their natural environment. So within 2 years, it completely transformed the environment, and with the plants came all the little animals. So different types of bees. The other days we were standing next to, I think it was a basil bush, and there were 4 different types of bees in the basil bush. And then we've got all the butterflies and spiders and then snakes, so it's like you get a full range of biodiversity. We even have some porcupines on campus at the moment, and they're eating their pumpkin.
Excellent, I love it. Now, part of this event, of course, has been hearing from inspirational people like Alba, but also we've been doing some really interactive work with young people, haven't we? And you've been part of the team planning that. Malika, tell us a little bit about what you've been doing today.
Yeah, so today we focused... so I want to backtrack to last year.
Of course, yeah.
Before I start, because what we learned from last year was we really tried to engage with the kids, but we still had a lot of kind of classical, we are talking about something, we are asking you maybe a couple questions, but we realized we want to be even more interactive. So this year when we started planning, we were really like, how can we make this the most interactive way? We really want the kids to stand up, to walk around, to talk to each other, really engage them in a very, very interactive workshop. And so today we did some role playing. And I mean, you two were also part of this, right? So the focus was, we started with, Alba, you did an amazing talk and interaction with the kids about values and what values mean and how to bring that into connection to sustainability. And then we continued with the role play. So we had, we created trump cards, which are these cards basically where you have, for us it was a person or 4 people that were introduced on these trump cards, and they had different values, things that were important for them in terms of community engagement, school engagement, parent engagement, student engagement, and sustainability. And then we had one person, that was me, I was a parent, and then Ollie, you were the education, what was it?
Department or policymaker, yeah.
And then Alba, you were a council member, exactly. Yeah. And so the students, they had this imaginary school, and they needed to think of a project that they wanted to do and that they wanted to implement into this imaginary school. And then they had to talk to all of these 4 stakeholders. We had one more, which was the principal, and they talked about, they had to go to us, talk about the project to us and get us to sign off, basically give our go and say, yes, this is something that we approve of and want to do. And it was really interesting because what I really noticed was giving the students some questions or follow-up ideas really made them think more and more outside of the box. And I think they were all very aware of certain problems that could come that could maybe potentially block them from creating this project. With finances, I think, was one thing that all of them were quite aware of. But then one thing that I really loved was one of the groups was talking about gardening. And I was like, so what about summer holidays when you're all away? What's happening to your garden? What's happening to all the vegetables that most of them are being harvested in the summer? What is happening to them? Are you growing them all year and then they're just dying? And they were like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? And they came up with the idea to, for example, include some of the community from outside the school. So they talked about maybe some elderlies would like to join us. Maybe some families that, might not even go on holidays. Maybe they would like to volunteer and say, we're actually staying. We would love to help out and learn more about this, right? So it's about finding these interactions. And it was really, it was a big difference to last year, I would say. I mean, you maybe have also your thoughts about that as well, because of course you've seen the development too.